everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Techquity Hub for today's Gals and Gear Techquity Tuesday. I am your host, Amy DeLuise, also the founder of Gals and Gear. And I'm so happy that you're part of our community and you're joining us for this important conversation today. I want to do a little shout out to our sponsors, especially our friends at Signiant, AJA, Dell, Adobe, and Blackmagic Design, who are consistently there for us. Also welcoming new sponsors, Motion Picture Enterprises, as well as Backblaze. So thank you all for joining our Techquity movement and helping us do what we do and making as many of our programs as possible free to entry. So let me get to our amazing panel because we have a lot to talk about today. Post-production, how to thrive in a gig economy, and really a lot of the changes that are going on. And these three women have really great vantage point to give us some of their perspectives and hopefully some good ideas for solutions as well. Director filmmaker Deborah Richards is part of a new wave of Hollywood filmmakers who rose from the ashes of the post-pandemic world. I love that she says that. And started their feature film careers during the 2020 shutdown. When she was still in film school back in 2015, she won 4 Southwest Production Emmys for her science fiction short Boy Meets Girl. And she's since directed a dozen shorts and over 100 television ads and web promos. In 2022, she got the title Nevada Woman Filmmaker of the Year from the prestigious Nevada, I should say Nevada, right? I know. I should know that by now. Nevada Women's Film Festival. In 2023, her debut feature, Move Me No Mountain, was released on Amazon Prime and Tubi, which is so awesome, Debbie. So congratulations.
Thank you.
She's done many things since then. I'll let her delve into all of that with you in a little bit. But one of the reasons she's here is she has a lens on this transformation of the industry, both from the vantage point of being a filmmaker and director, but also she's really a post-production maven as well, because she's a colorist, she's done production design, she's done visual effects, editing, etc. And so I think she's got a really great perspective. Also, she's a former bartending world champion, so you can't go wrong with that. So welcome, Debbie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Also, I want to introduce editor, writer, and post-producer Jennifer Beman. She has edited more than 100 hours of documentary and nonfiction television. And what that actually means is she's edited tens of thousands of hours of footage, right? So she's focused on reality, humor, emotion, and the drama of those moments that make nonfiction so compelling, which is something that's really near and dear to my heart since nonfiction is my world as well. And her films have been broadcast on Nova, National Geographic, Smithsonian Channel, Discovery Channel, and PBS, to name just a few. In fact, I can't even begin to read through all of her credits, but I'm just going to give you a couple of little samples to show the diverse subject matter that she's worked with. She edited The Dalai Lama's Gift, Call Me Dancer, Secrets of the Zoom, Roger and Me, Fahrenheit 11/9, Prohibition, and my favorite, Psychic Gold Hunter. So just gives you a broad range of the skills and magic that comes to life when Jen Beman gets her hands on a film. So thank you for being with us, Jen.
Thank you, Amy, for having me. It's nice to be here.
And last but definitely not least, Julia Pilzer serves as the Vice President of Sales and Business Development at Motion Picture Enterprises. MPE is a premier provider of end-to-end post-production services for production companies and networks and independent filmmakers. And their projects have included productions for Hulu, the Food Network, Netflix, Amazon, and many more. They have 3 adjoining buildings in Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan, totaling over 60,000 square feet of production space and edit suites. And as you can see, Julia is perched atop one of those, but that is not a fake backdrop, people. That is for real New York City. And I can tell you that because I was there Just last week, they have a fabulous rooftop and co-hosted our Gals and Gear NAB New York networking soiree for 140 women and a few brave men in the industry. So thank you, Julia, for making that such a special night, and also for offering your perspective from the view of a post facility that, by the way, does color grading as well as Dolby Atmos mixing. So it's a big place. Thank you, Julia.
Thanks for having me.
So let me start with each of you and just run down. I'll start with Debbie and move to Jen and Julia. Just what's a project that you're proudest of? It could be something from a long time ago or current, but what's something you're really proud of and why?
So I'm a little conflicted because the project that I'm most proud of is not necessarily my best project, but it was my first feature film, Move Me to a Mountain, which came out last year, and purely because it is such a hump to go from short films to feature films.
Yeah.
It was, metaphorically and literally a mountain to climb. So yeah, so I'm very proud of that, and mostly proud of the team that made it happen. I feel like I kind of screwed the pooch on it. I mean, there's a lot to like about it, but it's the team that I'm most proud of, and the fact that we got it done, and I learned so much through the process, and it really opened the gates for me to make other feature films. So that's what I'm proudest of.
I love that. You know, it's not always the top of the success. It's sometimes the internal success that we're so proud of. How about you, Jen?
Definitely the thing I'm most proud of is a recent feature doc that I did, Call Me Dancer, which is about a kid growing up in Mumbai, India, that was wanted to be a dancer and found a mentor, and it just follows his journey to try to become a professional dancer. He goes from India to Israel to New York, and he's so charming, and it's something I'm really proud of, because it's pretty intense storytelling, trying to piece together his story from before they started filming up through when they started filming, and making it look like a very cohesive piece. And it's gone to a lot of festivals, and that's been very gratifying.
Yeah. Do you have to kind of fall in love though with every project that you're currently working on?
Yes, yeah. It's a pretty intimate relationship that you have with the footage when you're editing a project.
Yeah.
I'm sure the producers feel the same way, but it's
Yeah.
yeah, I love them all in their own
Yeah.
quirky way, even Psychic Gold Hunters.
Yes. I know. How about you, Julia? Is there a project you're most proud of, and why is that?
Yeah, it's funny. I really think when I first heard this question, two ultimately came to mind. One of them is Attica, which MPE actually did the color grading and audio work for. It is a documentary with Stanley Nelson talking about violence and racism in the prison system. And just personally, I found it incredibly rewarding to be working on such an incredible project. And then ultimately as well too, I think similarly to Deborah, and hearing, what she's most proudest of as well. We recently did a project for Amazon as well, where we're meeting a lot of security protocols and going through a lot of workflow innovation. And I have to say, it was definitely, I can't say that, it was one of MPE's best projects that we did, but I think that we learned so much, and it was definitely an invaluable experience and laid the foundation for us to be now working on a lot of other Amazon projects as well too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sometimes those issues that you have to conquer, and even now with all the technical challenges that we have to conquer, I mean, we'll get into some of that later, but I think that's an interesting point. Now, I'm curious, what's a project you're working on right now that you're excited about? I'll start with you, Jen, and what's going on with that?
I really am torn between two of the things I'm working on. One,
We'll just do one now, and we'll talk about the other one. It's okay. We have time.
Time. Okay. Well, I just finished one job, and I'm kind of unemployed as an editor for the next couple of months. So I'm switching gears to my to my startup that I'm this business that I'm trying to start, where I created this method that's kind of in a weird way that maybe I'll get into later. It's sort of aligned with editing a little bit, like I got the inspiration from it for editing, but it's a tool for people to talk to people in their life, their partner or friend, using cubes to be symbols for thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and then arrange the cubes in a creative way that expresses more about that, and then have this visual aid sort of to talk to their partner about. And I call it biographs, and I've been working on it for about 7 years, but I recently got a product actually manufactured and starting to market it. So I'm
And is this
really
a physical, like physical cubes or digital cubes?
no, physical cubes, like little wooden cubes with magnets and a whiteboard. You know,
Wow.
you can't do everything on a screen. I think,
Yeah, I love that.
I think part of the thing that's powerful for people is that it's very tactile. You're kind of getting your thoughts out of your head and into this image that's separate from you. And you move the cubes around, and the little magnets make little nice fun clicking sounds, and everybody loves strong magnets, and so it's very sort of tactile and experiential way to process your emotions.
And process storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, it's about storytelling. It's about realizing that everything is a story, and every way you interpret the things coming into your to your senses from the outside world, your brain creates a story about it. And if you think about it as a story, it becomes something you can tell and share to somebody else as a story. So I think of it as
very cool. That's very cool. And the manufacturing component, which I'm sure is a whole new world for you. So that's very
I've
cool.
learned so many new things. Marketing, I don't know anything about marketing, but I'm learning that. And so,
Yeah,
and
cool.
design, many things that I hadn't done before.
That's great. Well, and I think that's one thing I love about this industry is we're always learning new things, whether we like it or not, we have to stay afloat. So Debbie, tell me what you're working on right now that you're excited about.
Oh, well, like probably everyone else here, multiple things, but the thing I'm most excited about is my next feature, which is my third feature. It's in development. It's a low budget, female driven, grounded horror set in Texas in the mid-80s, and it's called Scissor Mouth. And it represents a quantum leap for us in terms of everything, because it's a $3.5 million budget, so it's a pretty big thing for us. And we're heavily in development. What's so exciting about it is right now I'm in the animatic stage. So we're doing storyboards, but also like moving storyboards, the animatics. And what's really exciting, because I have this skill as a VFX artist, I'm able to digitally build models of the locations for the storyboards and animatics. And that same model will be used throughout the pipeline. So that same model will be given to the location scouts, to the production designers, to the carpenters, and then it will be used again in post for VFX work and stuff. So one model is being used throughout the whole pipeline, and that's the first time that I've been able to have my skill high enough to be able to do that and to see it through. So that's very exciting to me. So I'm just very excited about the movie. It's a scary movie.
That's fantastic. And I love the tie-in to, you're knowing the gear, so to speak, a gal who knows her gear, because that's obviously going to tremendously help the through line of production, efficiencies of production, and hopefully bringing your vision to life exactly how you designed it.
Yeah, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Kimberly Scum, who's in the room. She's our casting director and an old friend and amazing collaborator. So hi, Kim.
Wonderful. Always shout out other women. I love that. That's a key thing about Gals and Gears. We're always trying to get each other work too. So I think that's really important, and we'll have a chance to say hi to each other at the end too. Tell me about you, Julia. What's a project you're working on right now, and why are you excited about it?
Yeah, well, first off, Deborah, congratulations. That sounds so exciting, and I can't wait to see the project come to light.
Thank you.
But as we were talking about prior, MPE is a post-production house, so we're providing different equipment and services to, you know, filmmakers, documentarists, streaming platforms to ultimately provide the resources so that they can complete their project. So one thing that we're really trying to understand at MPE right now is how to better support so many different constituents in the film industry. And it's definitely been, as we said before, such a crazy and unique time. So one thing is ultimately providing different managed services and technical support to editors, color graders, and sound mixers, so that they can not only work, whether it's in our facility or anywhere nationwide. So right now, you know, a project that we really have been trying to further develop and now launch very soon, fingers crossed. But really it's to bring a lot of managed services and technical support to so many different people that we feel could really benefit from it as they are working from anywhere and in different workflows.
Well, you actually kind of jumped into my next question there with that, because I think all of you have seen the immense changes in the industry for however long you've been in it. We've certainly had some big transformations. Obviously, COVID really jump-started remote workflows as a part of that. It had already started before then. I mean, my production company was actually virtual before COVID, but I think it certainly cemented a lot of the technologies that we were starting to use and made them sort of must-haves. And I'm just curious, you know, from your perspective, let's start with you, Jen. I mean, what changes have you seen on the nonfiction and documentary side? What's happening now that wasn't happening even 5 years ago?
Well, mostly that nothing's getting greenlit, and a lot of the so and I wouldn't say from a technical side, you know, a lot of things, but the most impactful for me is that there's a lot less work right now.
And when you say less not getting greenlit, what you mean, like long form feature length documentaries, or what genre?
Well, yeah, so most of what I've been doing for most of my career, 30 years, is like National Geographic and History Channel, Discovery Channel, not so much reality shows, but
Right. So, and would they be miniseries?
unscripted stuff.
Would they be miniseries as
Yeah,
well as
a lot of
one-off?
miniseries. I was in the last 6 years, I've been doing a lot of the kind of animal pets and vets genre of for both just this Discovery Channel and National Geographic Channel, animal husbandry stuff. Really enjoyed doing that stuff during the pandemic. Just it was so calming just to edit animals. I was really enjoying
Right.
that. But those things, they don't want those anymore. And a lot of the production companies that I was working with on a regular basis were not finding that their series pitches were getting taken up, and long running shows, successful shows, were not getting another season up. So,
Right.
so mostly it's like I've been changing or working on changing how I look for work and how I market myself.
Yeah.
Really, I never really had to market myself before.
Right.
I don't mean,
Right.
I don't mean
Like
to
you,
humble brag or anything, but
right. No, yeah.
I just
Yeah.
had
But I mean, that's sort of
I had my
typical.
clients, you know, and they were consistently getting greenlit at National Geographic and Discovery. And they would call me when they had a new series, and I would do the series. And it was just like, you know, one job would end and I'd start another one, and
Well,
fully booked. And that's not the case anymore.
yeah. And I've noticed that, I mean, just from the producer side, I get a lot more emails from my editor colleagues, you know, who say like, I can see I'm going to have a gap in November. So if you have anything,
Yeah.
you know, like they're letting me know 30
Right.
days out or even 60 days out. I can see this project's coming to a close. Let me know if you have anything. I do everything I do a short form, so it's a little different, but you know, it's the same kind of thing, like marketing that they probably didn't used to have to do.
Right, right. So I'm trying to figure out, you know, new ways of, you know, I don't know, leveraging my website to get more clients. I've been writing articles on LinkedIn as a just a way to, that's why I
Right.
earlier we were talking, like, how do I get more views on my articles? Just to get my, just, I don't know, get my name out there. And
Right.
also
I'll give you some tips for that. I'll give you some tips for that. And one of them is to have like 3 or 4 people that you tell in advance that the article's coming out, and then you send them a message on LinkedIn with a link to the article and say, would you mind commenting and resharing?
Oh, that's a good idea.
So like send it to me.
Yeah.
Send it to me and I'll comment and reshare. But if you do it on the platform, it's just easier because then it like the link just goes directly to it. You could do it in an email too, but it's easier to do it on the platform.
I'll do that.
And you just kind of seed that,
Yeah.
some looks and some likes, and then it moves it up in the algorithm. We can get into the whole thing on that. But so marketing is different. I'm curious, Debbie, for you, I mean, obviously you're a filmmaker in indie film, but you're also can work as a contract editor, visual effects artist, whatever. How have things been shifting from your vantage point in narrative?
Right. So I've seen, obviously, like all of us, a ton of changes, and not to age myself, but I started editing in like 82 with 2 Betamax video players, just, cutting like that, when I was a kid. So obviously many changes since then, but it seems to be getting more and more rapid as time goes on. And since 2020, there's been so many changes. I really live in 2 worlds. I'm a film director, writer, director in the indie space, and I'm also a commercial director. I direct commercials. That's my bread and butter, and often, I get dragged into post on both of those things because I have those skills. So the changes that I've seen occur on the business side is obviously, like Jen was saying about not as much stuff being greenlit, but as an indie filmmaker, I've always greenlit myself, and that's why I've had to wear so many hats. Because when I was in film school and I was like, okay, I want to direct, it's like, what am I going to direct? Okay, I better learn how to write. So everything was, a consequence of that, of greenlighting myself. So that's kind of that world. In the post world, the explosion of change that I've seen over the last few years, obviously, is AI, and the ease of technology and the price of technology. I use so much AI in my daily workflow, tools that didn't exist a year ago, whether it be transcribing text to get through talking heads on a doc to cut out gaps and find things rather than having to sift through tons of stuff, to generative fill, to even I'm deep into stable diffusion with Comfy and generating concept art and all of that, and or even upscaling images and upresing images, or even taking a piece of footage and slowing it down to 8 times slow-mo without jitter using AI. All these tools didn't exist a year ago.
And
So
there's a couple of tools that just came out last week from Adobe with the new Premiere.
yeah, it's an explosion of these
It's
tools.
an explosion.
And they've just integrated into my workflow, and currently I'm having a love affair with a piece of software called Blender, which is now 30 years old and it's free, but 30 years ago it was garbage, and now it's just insane. It's insane. And it's just given me so much power to do so much. So
well, but you're bringing up something, Debbie, which is that, and maybe you just kind of learn on the fly, but it is about kind of constantly upskilling yourself.
oh, totally.
Right? I mean, like not
Totally.
every minute is billable. You got to sort of tinker around with things, or maybe take a quick, course, or listen to a YouTube thing or something. Like how are you conquering all these new tools?
I spend 2 days a week of my time throughout my 15+ year career learning. No doubt, maybe even more. I spend most of, and I love learning, so it comes easily to me. But people complain about the onslaught of AI and how it's going to take away jobs. So it's just like, the engine makers took away the saddle makers, but look at the industry that it created, and look at all the opportunities it created. And it's just another tool, and you can either bitch and complain about it, or you can embrace it and learn it and see how you can use those tools creatively. I don't think AI is ever going to take away from writers or actors, because you need pain
Mhm.
do those
Right,
skills
right.
and you
No,
know,
I
other
think
than my
so too. I
keyboard.
mean, I just saw a post from an editor. I'm in all these different editing and producing groups on various social platforms, and they were saying, this is what the shot looks like that they sent me. It's got all these problems, and all these people are jumping in and saying, oh, you could use this or that to auto correct that. And they were like, wait, I don't know how to do those tools. It's like, well, you need to, because
Me
you're
too.
now being given this footage that's not great, but you got to solve it. Like, you got to learn it.
Yeah, knowledge is power. It comes down to that.
Knowledge is power.
And as Steve Jobs said, a computer is a bicycle for the mind. So if you can leverage that, why not?
Right. Somebody asked about editing vertical video. I mean, certainly you can use all the same tools to do that. I mean, our Gals and Gear editors use Premiere for vertical or CapCut. Somebody mentioned CapCut, Sarah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of tools. I think for me, that would be more of a skill set of short form editing. It's not so much about whether it's vertical. It's like a whole different style of storytelling to do short, vertical, like you might do short vertical promos about a long form film.
Well, I've seen two approaches to that that are kind of interesting. On the production side, there's some camera girls and people who are using the framing on the camera using guidelines to frame out both and shooting landscape, but having the frame lens on the monitor so you can get a grip on that. But also some people that will mount a phone on top of the camera to simultaneously capture that content, which is interesting.
Yes, it is. And I have to say, having had to edit down to vertical, I'd rather just shoot natively vertical, even if it is a phone. If it's just going to go to social media, you can shoot 4K with a phone anyway. Sometimes that's really the better look for that. But I'm curious, Julia, from a post house perspective, what trends you mentioned, that you're having to learn some new workflows and tools like for security reasons, because probably remote workflows and people coming in and looking at cuts and distributed networks for editing. I mean, what are some of the trends that you're seeing and how are they changing everything you're doing?
Yeah, so I mean, to Deborah's point, are you sure that's you and not AI? But no, I would just say that technology is changing so rapidly. And I think that we really have to try to utilize a lot of these tools as something that's friendly, that will, really propel us forward and not set us back. Similarly, I think that a lot of these creative workers, by utilizing these tools, I think that, their jobs won't be taken away. If anything, they'll be able to work smarter, more efficient, and honestly, cost effectively. So that's the first thing I'd say is just in general that the technology advances have just become so extreme that it's a really exciting time with all of these advances. Definitely, I would just say as well too that the biggest trend I think that we've seen since post-COVID is that everybody's just working remotely, and I think with that there's so many different types of workflows that people need to have to make sure that they are staying not only in connection with their team, but also making sure that they edit, color grade, and sound mix appropriately. So whether that's a type of workflow that you have from a content security management point of view, I mean, there's so many different ways that you need to look at it, especially when you're dealing in a workflow
Right.
that is remote.
Well,
So
and also storage. How are you coping with storage? Because at least that's like the
absolutely.
biggest, and that's going to be like a whole other Gals and Gear session, by the way, that we're going to be doing called Storage Quest in February. And if you say it, it's got to have an echo. So it's like Storage Quest. Because I feel like that's what, is really happening because all these distributed editors are now being asked to have their own storage and backup like on as well as whatever the cloud thing is, right?
Yeah, so there's so many, and the remote workflow that I was talking about, really storage is ultimately kind of the foundation, how you manage all of your media and how it gets from one place to the next, uploaded, downloaded. So really it's the type of project that you're working on, the type of media that you have, and ultimately to how many people are collaborating. You know, I think that when you're dealing from a post perspective, there are so many different elements that you need to also think about, whether it is, you know, from a budget point of view, location, and then ultimately, you know, what your client wants. So
Right.
there's
Like
so
how many
many,
producers are going to need to see this rough cut or this color grading pass?
and there's so many different types of technology now that when it comes to storage that, you know, really, I think that you can luckily be creative as more of these advances happen. So the last thing that I was going to say is that in addition to, you know, AI and all of these technical advances, working remotely, I would just say too, that definitely the biggest transformation that I've seen is just post actor and writer strike. You know, I think that the industry right now is just at a very pivotal time where, you know, I think that so many changes have occurred over these last couple of years that, you know, MPE feels optimistic for the future, knowing that there's going to be a great foundation going forward to hopefully get things, you know, more greenlit and to really support, you know, the community as we push forward, amongst all of this chaos over the last couple of years.
Right, right. And we're sort of at the end, hopefully the turning point of that. But I mean, well, first of all, a couple of people have made comments like Anne, who's the DP, and Gaffer in the audience is saying she's now being asked to shoot live events so they can be cut vertical later for promos, which changes the whole way they see the scene, and about look space and the rule of thirds and all those things. So it's sort of a different mentality. And then she also added, I just cleared 11 hard drives from my desk so I could put my.
Congratulations.
I know. And, you know, and that is like, again, a whole other conversation we're going to have, but you know, everybody talks cloud, but I don't know anybody who doesn't still use the sneaker net, as we used to call it affectionately, and, you know, rushing hard drives to some editors.
Well, we have a saying around here that content doesn't exist unless it exists in three places.
Right. Absolutely.
And
3, 2, 1 backup system always.
I have 50 terabytes on my desk, and it ballooned after we went to like 4K some 8 years ago, whatever. But now with like and Jen, I'm sure you can speak to this of the pain of you know, 4K storage plus backup on documentary, which is just insane amounts of content.
Right.
And it's and then you add, you know, post and VFX and those kinds of workflows into it, and it's just a giant amount of data wrangling.
Yeah, I don't have anywhere near 50 terabytes, but I tend to have just sort of one project at a time on a large drive. So
Yeah. Well, but I think your point is well taken, Debbie, that people are now expecting certain skill sets to go with editing that used to be separate from editing. So I know that on tight budgets, people are expecting editors to be color graders and sound mixers, which I personally don't love because I think they're separate skill sets, but the tools are now available to be packaged in with the edit and LE, so you don't really have the excuse to say, well, I don't even have that system.
Well, I think from a client's point of view, skill stacking is just adding value. So,
Right.
you know, as we compete in an incredibly competitive world, any edge is an advantage in the gig economy.
Exactly. So going back to the marketing stuff that you were talking about, Jen, you know, when you market yourself, you should say what skills you can stack, you know, and say, and if you don't have them yourself, one thing that I learned years ago from Kim Foley, who's a makeup artist turned coach for senior, you know, CEOs and other senior executives. She used to have an agreement with 2 other Yahtzee certified makeup artists. So if she wasn't available on a gig, she would book one of them on a gig. So she would never lose a client because of not being able to work that day. I mean, those were, you know, a little different than booking you for 6 months on a documentary. But the idea was to have some people in your group and say, you know, like, I have a great sound mixer it's part of my team, my extended team, you know, so that I can help you with all of those pieces if I can't do it myself, you know, that kind of thing. So I think if we don't have the skills ourselves, marketing other entities are packaging it up, saying, I can help you with vertical, 20 vertical, cut downs for social media promos or whatever. So I think a lot of it is this packaging up of skill sets to be able to thrive in this gig economy.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The color correcting and the mixing, I have a lot of the skills. I have the skills of that, but there's a lot of things like design is a very, you can learn the design tools, you can learn the program and how to create things, how to create an animation, but learning how to think like a designer.
That's
is
different,
a
right?
totally different thing. And sometimes, I don't think I actually have good design skills. I can use the programs, but
Right.
that's not what,
Right.
I'm a storyteller, I'm not that great with design. I can see that's a good design.
Right.
So
Well, and I think that's an excellent point, because I think a lot of people, especially in the social media space, are like, oh, I could do that because I can just push these buttons and it's part of the program. But that doesn't make it, like, when you see something that's really well designed, whether it's something in a long form piece, it just hits you in a different way, right? I mean, you just
yeah,
know.
yeah. Like, I mean, right now I just finished a documentary that I was editing for 9 months, and now I'm moving into it, which I've never done before, helping them to market it and
Interesting.
try to
Interesting.
try to be a part of that team to get to figure out how do we market documentaries now, because that's completely changed even in just the last
Yeah, I mean, now we're doing this narrow casting where, you're going direct to consumer, and then
Yeah.
they've subscribed to the documentary network, whatever the streaming service is, and you have to pitch them directly on that platform.
Yeah. There's lots of different paths that we're just learning about that.
Mhm.
I mean, when we started editing, we thought the path was, okay, we get this to, we get a good documentary, we finish it, we put it in the festivals, we
Right.
hire, an agent to try and sell it to Netflix.
Right,
And,
right.
and now we're realizing that, that we just finished the online and mixed last week.
Okay.
Oh, that's not the way to do it. And I
Right.
all yesterday trying to design a poster, which is actually I'm not being very successful at. But so we're looking at how do we market it? We get it
Right.
into festivals, but then we have to do, like a lot of filmmakers now are um, uh, you're finding their audience. This film is about this thing with the Dalai Lama that happened in the 1980s in the United States, and so who'd be interested in that?
Right. Well, and like, how many people are following hashtag Dalai Lama, and how do you get to those people?
You get to those people, and then reach out to those people and say, would you like to have a screening in your
Right.
community?
Right. Well, and that's something that, we're doing a lot for projects, is we're doing these collabs. So we'll produce a project, and our work is all nonfiction, tends to be advocacy, nonprofit-y kind of stuff, or associations, or some government agencies. But then we'll figure out collaborations, like, so that when we promote something with social media, we're collaborating with those other entities that have those audiences already. And I was just looking at a report before I jumped on for one of our clients where we got, like 2,000 more views of a reel, and 80% of them were new to their audience. Like, in other words, because we did a collaboration, it, allowed for crossover. So, I mean, I think those marketing skill sets are now becoming really important. And going back to what you were talking about, Debbie, with the tools that are built in, I mean, even when I'm in an editing mode with like transcripts, because I do a lot of testimonial based stuff and interview based stuff, I'll be tagging things for 2 different uses. I'll tag the longer bite that's going to be in the show, and then I'll tag a version of that I want to use that I know it will end up in a social media promo or something shorter. So I'm kind of.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say really quickly, like, speaking to Jen's point, like, one of the hardest things as a filmmaker is connecting with an audience. And my last feature film, which was a documentary, which is currently in talks with a bunch of distributors, it's a documentary about the competitive world of underground competitive bartending, you know, when they throw the bottles and stuff. It's called Shaken and Stirred.
Which you're an award-winning
Well,
bartender.
that was my connection to that world, but
Right.
the reason why we greenlit ourselves here at 1905 was because we had 13,000 emails of flair bartenders, and that was enough to greenlight ourselves to say, okay, we can make this film because we have a direct connection to the grassroots audience.
Right.
And had we not had that prior to starting the project, we wouldn't have done the project, because it's so important to have have a plan and a pathway, because the movie business is the only business in the world where you make a pizza and then you say, hey, does anyone want a pizza? And
Right.
that's not a great model. So you know, if you can and funnily enough, with our next film, Scissormouth, we did a marketing validation campaign through Facebook and using Meta's tools to target our demographic and find out if they even wanted to see this movie. And when we had a phenomenal response to that, we're like, okay, so there's an audience here. So it's so important now, because as our world gets more and more fractured and everyone gets in their little, you know, bubbles and you know, their own little, you know, algorithm of what's being fed to them,
Right.
it's harder and harder to connect with a wide audience. So you have to
Right.
find I feel you have to find the audience first, and then
Yeah.
connect the project to the audience.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing from you is that marketing is now a skill set that really filmmakers, editors have to have. Like, it sounds from all of
I
you
believe
that
so.
whether you're running a post facility with multiple people, you know, that you're constantly kind of in a marketing mode, even though you're in a creative production mode as well.
Well, I think it's important to understand the difference between advertising and marketing. So advertising is just saying, hey, we have this, whereas marketing is you're telling your target demographic, hey, we have this.
And you're also, I think, telling a story to a certain
Well, it's all
extent.
storytelling for
Right.
you know, and Jen, I just want to say, I think even design is storytelling. I think it's all storytelling, and we're all storytellers at heart. But no matter what you're presenting, whether it be a pitch, a movie, an idea, we're constantly telling stories, because there's got to be a beginning, middle, and end, and a point to it.
Well, I think, you know, Julia, since you're looking at this from a post house perspective, I mean, I think this idea of pivoting is something obviously MPE already has done, because I looked into the history of your company, and it started out after World War II supplying film reels and cans of film just in New York City. Obviously to other people who were producing films. So it was sort of a film can distributor. And obviously now it's like completely flipped, and now you're editing productions and you're involved in the workflow. And you mentioned a little bit earlier, it sounds like that you're now kind of getting into this mode of helping your own customers package up their productions or manage their own workflow. Do you want to tell us a little more about that pivot?
Yeah, so one thing I would just say is that, you know, MPE, since the start in the 1940s, has really transformed and has had innovation by listening to our communities and our clients and partners, understanding exactly what their needs are. And to Jen and Deborah's point as well, too, similarly, it's really going back to a specific type of community to kind of understand exactly, you know, what they're engaged in or what they're interested in. So, you know, MPE has had many different types of evolutions based off of, you know, what our clients are telling us that is the latest technology that they want, a specific type of storage unit, you know, way that we color grade now that might be different. So we've just evolved based off of hearing and listening. But, you know, definitely I'd say that a huge component of that is also too tapping into so many different types of resources. Obviously, one of that is marketing. So definitely, you know, trying to, you know, highlight and point out some of the exciting things that MPE is doing, whether it's going to different trade shows, but also, I know that we had mentioned the power of social media as well too. It's a great way to really connect with people. Also going into different Facebook groups as well, really can understand exactly where things are and different approaches. But yeah, it's definitely an exciting time overall in post-production. And I think that MPE is trying to understand now more than ever how we can be better partners to so many different exciting filmmakers and the community at large.
Right. Well, Sarah Mosley has a question for all of you. Do you have any advice for early career filmmakers? I want to throw that to you, Debbie, first, and think about it, Jen and Julia.
Sure, I'm just gonna spit out a whole bunch of advice. Greenlight yourself. Um, if you're raising money, 99% of it's gonna come from friends and family to begin with. It's a numbers game. Ask 100 people and 10 people will fund your movie. Develop thick skin. We all know actors and actresses who get turned down for auditions all the time. I don't know how they do it, but you got to take a little bit of that on board because it's an up and down industry. Have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. When you're scouting locations, see them in the rain, see them in the sun, see them in the snow, so that when you get to set, you can pivot if necessary. And on that point, be flexible to pivot all the time, because I tell people all the time, some of my best plan A's started life as plan B's. And sometimes it's not about how good of a director you are, it's about how quickly you can pivot. Be nice, you meet the same people on the way up as you do on the way down. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. So that's just a handful.
That's great advice. Jen, any additional advice?
That was a lot of really good advice. I don't know if I could come up with something else other than that. But one thing I would say is that one of the things that's changed since I started is that everything is remote, which is great. I love working remotely, but it is a handicap as well because you're not having face-to-face time with people that you're working with. And you're working on a project, and all those other editors or all those other people, all the other people that are working on it will be people that it may help you find work, or you might help find them work in the future. But it's hard if you're remote to connect with them. So you've really got to make an effort to even just call your team and say, hey, how's it going over on your project, like to really work to establish some connections as you're working on projects, on every project you're on, because that's how you build a good community.
That's a really good point, Jen, because I'm thinking about how I got on my first big movie, which was through a location manager who worked for this little broadcast production company that at the time I was working for, and I was miserable there for a number of reasons we won't go into, but and she had written me a little note saying, when you quit, not if you quit, but when you quit, call me. And I called her, and then she brought me on as an assistant location manager for JFK and a bunch of other big movies that she was working on. And that's how I got into the feature film world, which is where I started. And I learned so much just from sitting next to her and listening to her on the phone, like negotiating for scissor lifts and, negotiating how much coffee needed to be on the set and, negotiating for all kinds of things on location. Like that, it just was a window into filmmaking, just from that one perspective. And then of course, being out on location with all the people. But I don't think I could have learned that if I was working remotely or she was working remotely and we weren't stomping around on locations and stuff together. So I do think that's great advice to try to be connected to people, Sarah, and anyone else listening. And, even if it means like, I don't mind coming to where you're working, even if you're working at your home, do you mind if I come one day a week so I can sort of see what it is you're doing? Or do you mind if I come and hang out with the editor wherever they're doing it so that I can see what they're doing?
Editing is such a solitary process, and I think that it draws the kind of people that kind of want that solitary process. So and then assistant editors now, they're just at home working on their computer, syncing stuff and and not really involved so much in the editing process a lot of times. So especially for those post-production support people, reach
Right.
out to the people who are,
Right.
the editors and the designers and say, what are you doing? What's
Right.
what, why are you doing this? I know, I noticed in the last cut, I saw you made this change here. Tell me about that. I think
Right.
you make more effort to make those, to get that feedback from those people.
That's great. That's great advice. And I think actually a place
Yeah,
like MPE, a place like MPE as a post house is really a great opportunity too. Like you're in Berlin, so I don't know what the post house scenario is out there, but that's a physical place where you could still drop in if you were a production assistant there and like see, well, okay, what's happening in this color grading room? What's happening in this Dolby 7.1 sound mix room? What's happening in this edit room today? Just to get like more information and be able to
Yeah.
ask questions when appropriate, which it's hard to do when you're
Yeah.
just by yourself.
Yeah, there's a production house here that I've been meaning to go to in person actually for that because I've had a lot of sorry, I lost my voice last week.
Okay.
But I've had a lot of email interactions with these people that haven't really led anywhere. So I think I'm really obsessed with their setup. So I'm
Yeah,
hopefully
just show,
gonna try an
maybe you can,
in-person connection.
yeah, if you can show up and interact in person, I think that would really be helpful. And just say, I'm willing to, get coffee for everybody. And just to be a fly on the wall and understand
Yeah.
what's happening. I mean, I wouldn't do that long term.
Yeah.
Obviously, your time is valuable. You need to charge for your time, but sometimes
Yeah.
you have to get your foot in the door. That's how I got my foot in the door with the production company.
Yeah.
Was I just said, like, can I just help with things?
Yeah.
And in the end, they dumped
one
a
thing-
bunch of
Yeah,
stuff.
they actually produced, yeah.
One thing that I was
Sorry.
going to say too is that at MPE, we have a very vast facility in Midtown New York. So while you're in Berlin, if you ever want to, work remotely and tap in and connect with one of our editors, you're more than welcome to do a day in the life with, color, sound mixing, you name it. But
Oh my gosh.
we partner with so many different exciting organizations like the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment or the New York Foundation of the Arts that have a really exciting community of students and people that are just starting out in the film industry that are really excited and passionate, and they're constantly coming through our doors to do a day in the life or shadow different editors. And knock on wood, once things get I think a little bit busier in New York and things are finally picked up post all of the craziness, they'll immediately think of you when they need to hire an editor or a sound mixer or a colorist. So that ultimately would be kind of my first piece of advice is definitely start out at the PA level. No matter what you're interested in doing, it's such an incredible opportunity to see every single aspect of production, because even when you're in post, you need to know what it's like to do pre-production and production in general to have a great foundation. So really, it's being a PA, or just also tapping into the types of communities we were talking about prior. So whether it's, connecting with different people at post houses or different editors that it can be so beneficial. The other thing I would just say as well too is that there are so many different Facebook groups as well that I'm a part of. I know I talked about this prior, but there's the Gals in Gear, obviously, and the amazing events that they do, but also in New York and in LA, they do have the Blue Collar Collective post-production group that meets on a monthly, happy hour, which can be so fun to connect with people as well. But the other thing that's great in New York, and I know that they have it around the entire country as well, is that they have really amazing statewide resources, which are incredible. So specifically in New York, they have the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment that funds so many different types of students. I think it's over 200 per year go through a type of training program where they are learning all of the different types of platforms. Also, the New York Foundation of the Arts, they give over $2 million a year to different women that aren't filmmakers. So I think it's also tapping into different types of resources as well that, can really push and propel you forward and ultimately kind of help navigate your career as it might be in, a unique state.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
I just dropped one of those, you probably already know them, but it's Female Filmmakers of Berlin. It's a group in your community. That's part of a female film festival that they do in Berlin.
Oh yeah.
So,
And I'll be attending Berlinale again.
oh, good, good,
So
good, good,
hopefully, but
good.
thank you. So yeah, yeah. And
So
in
I
Europe,
wanted
there's
to
actually
just,
a lot of financing available.
yes, and I think because you're in Europe, there's actually even more, because in Europe, like every country designates a certain amount of money for films. Unlike here, where you have to go with your hand out and, you know, do a as Debbie mentioned, like knock on 100 doors to get 10, and right. So in Europe,
Yeah.
there's a lot more opportunities to tap into some film funds.
I have a couple of
But thank you so much, everyone.
I have a couple of other little
Sorry.
bits of advice that I just want to throw in. You know, on the technical side, on set, make sure you get tons and tons and tons and tons of coverage so that you don't drive editors crazy in post, because it's like nothing worse than being like, oh, if only we could cut to this, but it doesn't exist.
Right.
So get tons of coverage. Also, from a directing point of view, this is something I've learned through a couple movies now. Don't sweat the wide. You know, like if you're trying to get you know, your master wide shot, you know, as long as you're in and you're out is great. Don't stress about all the details in the body of that shot, because you're gonna punch in for the close-ups anyway for the performance.
Right.
So don't sweat the wide. If you're doing
There you
you
go.
know, you're doing 7, 8, 10 takes of your wide,
Right.
move on. Just make
Well,
sure
you know, what
the
I
head and
often
tail.
do, because I'm working with real people who like, you know, are even on worse of a time clock than when you're setting up a shot that's a narrative. So often my wide shot, I'll just hang a camera for a wide, and I'm actually shooting my tight shots while the wide is, I mean, obviously I can't want to get the other cameras in the shot, but we sometimes are doing 2 shots at once, basically, to get the coverage. So that's a little top tip. And
Can I just
Anne
throw
says,
one
use the
last
wide
thing
to
in?
give the actors a warm up. So I
Perfect,
think
yeah.
it depends, Anne. If you have professional actors, yes. If you're using real people, I say the opposite, because real people always get worse with every take.
Yeah, this is prescripted.
It also depends on the actor, because some actors like to, you know, get it on the first take, and some actors like to warm up. So that's part of knowing your actors and
Exactly.
using the stick or the carrot, depending on the person. But the last piece of advice that I just want to drop is that this is a relationship business. And even if you're staying in contact with people during the post process, I make it a point to stay in contact with people beyond that, because you can get so close on a production and in post with your teams that when you're done, there's a natural lull for everyone emotionally, because you're no longer in daily contact with your film family. And so I make it a point to reach out to my people and say, hey, I'm just checking in. I know we're not working on this anymore, but how are you?
Right.
And that goes a long way.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to wrap up, because we are a supportive community. And so thank you for joining Gals and Gear for this Techwitty Tuesday. I want to thank our absolutely fantastic panelists, Jen, Debbie, and Julia. I'm sure we could have talked for hours. We'll do that at one of our in-person events, hopefully. We have a new Techwitty Tuesday coming up. It'll be about virtual and hybrid content and events, which is something a lot of people are having to get involved with. It's on November the 12th, same time, same place. So I hope you will join us. It'll be with Ashley Kennedy, who is in fact one of the top LinkedIn Learning authors, and also an amazing video producer and director. So I think that's going to be a very interesting session. Thank you again for joining us. Please go to the Gals and Gear website. There's actually a donation link there, because we do have tax deductible donations, which would be great to support what we do. And if you're connected to any companies or organizations that might want to become sponsors, we always want to hear from you. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you, Amy. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.